Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a scientist at the Dauphin Island Sea Lab. I work in Ronnie Baker's lab studying red drum, which I think lots of you have probably fished for and like to catch. I study what they eat and where they go, and with the eventual goal that I'm going to try to match up where red drum go and what they're doing there, if they're hiding or if they're eating or if they're just going from place to place. So the first thing I need to do is figure out what they eat in that process. So I take red drum stomachs. Now this red drum probably looks funny. This doesn't look like the red drums you see in the aquarium or when you catch them. It's because this was donated to me by a recreational angler. So he ate all the good tasty parts and then donated the organs to me so that none of the drum goes to waste. So the first thing I do when I get a fish is measure him. Are you a him? Yeah, you're probably a him.
How can you tell?
So their gonads are in here, and this might be an ovary. Can I slide this in here? I cannot. So this is a testy as compared to an ovary. Oh, now it slides in there, but I'm pretty sure that's not an ovary. It's very small. It's not enlarged. And my fish people will correct me if I'm wrong. Well, let's see if the Powers Lab goes, Sarah. So these are all his insides. Now, before I cut him up, usually I would weigh him, but he's been filleted, so if I weighed this, that wouldn't be very reflective of how big he was. But I'll measure him two ways. I'll measure his standard length, which is basically to where his tail bends, right at my thumb. And he is about 439 millimeters standard length, because we use the metric system in science. And then he is about 514 millimeters total length. So that's to the tip of his tail. So once he's measured, I pull his stomach out.
Oh, wow.
So we've got all his other organs are kind of falling apart here, but that's his liver. These little fingery things are pyloric ceca. They're part of his digestive system too. And there might be a heart in there. I might have dropped it out at some point. So, to make it easier to get to make sure I get all of his stomach. Cut that out of the way. I'm going to cut up through here. And kind of break this open. There's his heart. These in here got his gills and his gill rakers. These are really sharp. They're not fun to pull on, so I've got gloves on, and the smell. And so I find the top of his stomach. I don't have a petri dish. I'm going to need that. They're over there. I'll get them.
Aubrey wants to know, where would the eggs be?
The eggs would be, if this was going to have eggs, they'd be down in here. They would be, it's kind of, they look really funny. They're like a bright orange, yellow, spongy color. And they taste all right fried. Just, if you ever catch a gravid red drum and you want to fry up the gonads. I've never eaten drum gonads, but I've eaten trout gonads.
Eliana, did you kill the fish or did it just die?
It was caught by a fisherman. So it was caught by a fisherman. I think that's the best way to answer it. So it was caught to be eaten. That's why he's missing all of his flesh. The fisherman ate his fillets, kind of like if you were to eat a fish fillet at a restaurant. And then he donated the rest to me so that this part doesn't go to waste. The rest of him's getting used for science, which I think is pretty cool. All right, get all.
Hannah wants to know where the heart is and how small is its size. And you would open it up a second ago.
His heart is right there.
Wow.
So he's a pretty big fish. It's a pretty reasonable sized heart. Sometimes those are harder to find.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so now we have
a stomach. And I would grab a petri dish so that I don't make my scale gross, because my lab mates prefer when I don't.
Felicia asks, do predators eat the whole stomach or do they spit it out? So if a predator was going to eat the fish, is it going to eat the whole stomach of the fish?
They will swallow their prey whole. Yep, whether it's a whole crab or a whole eel or a whole fish. They swallow it all if they can. Basically, if it fits in their mouth, they're going to eat it and try to shove the whole thing in there. I've pulled whole catfish, whole eels, and whole probably mullet, but we're not totally sure, out of my red drum stomachs. The crabs get all broken up, but they look pretty close to whole crabs sometimes too. So they really do. They just kind of slurp it up whole.
Joey wants to know, how big is his brain? Have you ever pulled out a red drum brain? We can ask the fisheries lab on
I was going to say that might be a Justin question. I have never pulled a brain out of a red drum. I did try to pull the brain out of a fish when I was in undergrad in a behavior and neurobiology class, and it was very, very small and very easy to damage when you try to cut it out. And I don't have the right stuff to saw open this guy's head to get his brain. I'm going to saw it open to get his otoliths, and I'm going to really mess up his skull when we do that. You need kind of delicate, sharp tools, which this isn't delicate when we do stomachs. So I guess the short answer is I don't really know how big a red drum brain is, but it's probably not very big.
And we'll have to save that one for Justin.
Yeah, throw that at Justin. That'll be fun.
Alice, who's 8 years old, wants to know, what type of water does a red drum live in?
Ooh, good question. Red drum live in all kinds of water, actually. They can do fresh water, salt water, and brackish water, which is in between the two.
Judah wants to know, is it cold-blooded or warm-blooded?
So, cold-blooded always kind of hurts my feelings when we say it, because cold-blooded sounds like they're mean. But they are exothermic. So, exothermic is the sciencey way of saying cold-blooded, and it means that their body temperature, they don't control their body temperature. They match the surrounding water temperature, whereas you and me, mammals, we're endothermic. So we produce our own heat and stay about the same temperature all the time. There are some fish that are endothermic, and we're getting really into that cool research that they circulate their blood in a way to keep their eyes and brain extra warm. But that's like super new research. That's fun stuff.
DJ wants to know, what kind of fish is it?
This is a red drum.
And how can you tell it's a red drum? So like what?
Actually, he's still got his defining feature. So I would tell he's a red drum because before he was filleted, he was a nice orangey, brassy color, kind of like his face is. And then the spot on the tail is actually pretty indicative of him being a red drum. Most of it's missing, but almost all red drum have one spot on the tail. It's funny, if you go to the estuarium, they're actually missing their spots. Confused me very badly when I first got here. And when they're little, they have more than one spot. They'll actually have speckles kind of all the way down their sides. They're really pretty. I like little red drum with all their spots. And when they're really, really tiny, they're spotted like Dalmatians.
Cool. How deep does the fish typically live? So how deep are these guys when you find them?
When I find them, not very deep, in water that I can stand in. But I haven't spent a lot of time catching red drum this size. I let my recreational anglers that are better at it do that for me. I've done most of my research with red drum that are smaller than about this, and I find those in about waist-deep, muddy water, and I catch them with a seine net.
Ezra wants to know, how many organs do fish have?
I'd have to Google that. I could start kind of maybe counting, but
they have all your typical organs.
Yeah.
They have a liver and a heart and
a stomach, intestines, gonads. They don't really have lungs. They've got the gills instead.
And then they have a brain.
Yep. They've got a nervous system. They've got skin. It all kind of gets into what you consider an organ. Yeah.
And then, okay, so what's next? So we have the fish.
The stomach
out.
The stomach weighs 62 grams, which is actually pretty heavy for a fish this size. I can tell, squishing it a little bit, that there's stuff in there, and I've got another one over there that we're going to open too. But I also, before I'm done, sorry lab mates, I'll clean that up, is I take the otoliths out of the skull.
Okay, what's an otolith?
An otolith is a fish ear bone, and red drum are soniferous. It's my favorite fish word. Means they make noise. So they have extra big ear bones that should be really easy to pull out. But since I'm live, I'm probably not going to be able to find them.
Say that word again. Soniferous?
Soniferous. S-O-N-O. Forous.
Oh, I think you won the spelling bee, Sarah.
I was like, oh, can I do that one? So if you think of like sonic being associated with sound waves and things like that, it means they make sound. They make a drumming sound with their swim bladder. Yeah, his swim bladder is destroyed. That's another organ that fish have that we don't have.
And that helps them regulate how they
float and how they swim and keeps them buoyant.
So as you're pulling out the otolith, I think Cohen's question is really important. He wants to know how old this fish is.
So I don't know how old he is. He is mature, and that's all I got. But you can tell exactly how old they are by counting rings on otoliths. And I'm not going to steal Justin's thunder, because Justin is going to tell you all about that on Friday?
Yes, right on Friday, 10 a.m., right here.
And he'll show you how he counts rings on otoliths to age fish. For me, what's important about otoliths is their shape. Because sometimes when I open a fish's stomach, all that's left of the fish they ate are these otoliths. But because each otolith for each species of fish is a unique shape, I can look at that little tiny bone, if that's all that's left of the fish, and tell what species it was. In fact, I've got some on my computer over there that I can show you that are different.
Okay, let's finish up right here what we have, and we'll get over there. And we have a couple more questions. Madeline 5 wants to know, what kind of food do they eat? So what are you looking for in their stomachs?
I didn't really know what they ate exactly before I started this project. That's been the sort of the cool part about it. They seem to really like crabs and shrimp, especially when they're littler. And when they're big like this, they eat other fish, they eat bigger crabs, and then the coolest thing I have found in a drum stomach so far is a whole speckled worm eel. So I imagine he slurped it up like a spaghetti noodle, which I just think is an awesome visual. Speckled worm eels are about a foot long. They're super skinny, kind of pencil thick. They're covered in little spots, hence speckled. And they don't have very big mouths. They're not scary like a moray eel or anything. They really look like worms. So, and I didn't know that red drum would eat speckled worm eels. That was really cool. A couple of friends donated the fish after they filleted them, and they said they caught them out by one of the oil rigs, and they're like, I think it's got an eel in its stomach, but they didn't want to take it apart because they know that's my job. And I immediately texted them and said, yeah, it was an eel. That's really cool, guys. So that's been fun.
One more question. We have Edwin and Caden. They both want to know, how big can a red drum get?
The biggest I should know that one off the top of my head, and I'm sorry I don't. But the biggest red drum I have ever handled was about this big. Can you see me? Do I need to back up?
There, I gotcha.
Was about this big, so a little bit shorter than I am tall. That was a huge, what we call a bull red, big old male red drum that he was caught at the fishing rodeo. He's technically over slot. If you get him that big, you're supposed to let them go. But I have his stomach somewhere. It didn't even fit in one of my bags. I had to get a special bag for it. It's frozen. It'll be really cool to look at that one, though.
Isabella wants to know, do you like to eat fish after working with them all day?
I do, actually. I still eat fish a lot. I'll eat the fish that I catch if I'm allowed to. For research, that's frowned upon. I let the recreational anglers eat the fish. But yeah, I like to use the whole fish as much as possible, and I absolutely love eating fish.
Leo wants to know why the spot is not there with red drum at the estuarium. So why don't they have some?
We don't know, and it drives me nuts. Brian Jones and I have talked about it a lot. We can't figure it out. It's very strange. And if I ever figure it out, I will let you know. And I'll probably publish it because that'll be exciting news.
Oh. We have a couple people who want to know, how many legs can they lay at a time? Do you happen to know that?
It's got to be at least in the thousands and probably more. I'm not going to promise they're an R-selected species that lays lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of eggs, because most of them are going to get eaten and very few are actually going to grow up, but I'm pretty sure that's how they do. Not terribly familiar with red drum reproduction, though. More of a diet and movement girl.
Hannah says that she's dissected a chicken before, and it is fun, but gross, like this fish dissecting.
Accurate. I feel that. I mean, that's why I have gloves on. I've actually done this without gloves, and it takes me a week to get the smell off my hands. So we stick with gloves.
April wants to say thank you. She has 2 7-year-olds going crazy with school being out, and this is awesome.
Aww.
Let's see. So let's move on to something else. I have some other questions that we'll do, but let's take a step through what you have next to do. Are we going to go over?
We're going to head to my computer and my microscope.
Yep, sounds good. All right.
All right. So I'm going to note my well-spaced paper towels so that I try really hard to keep the drum guts off my computer.
I'm sure IT appreciates that.
Yeah, that's why we have Lysol wipes. So remember I told you the shapes of the otoliths are reflective of the species? So these are some otoliths that I have pulled out of stomachs before. This, I'm almost certain, is a catfish otolith. Catfish are siniferous too. They buzz with their fins. It's really neat. They sound like angry bumblebees. I love it. And so they have a big otolith that's shaped like a marble. This is a very small otolith because it was a baby catfish. You see how it's kind of round like that? As compared to these are different otoliths. I don't know what species these are from, but it's a totally different shape. So while I know this is probably a catfish, this is almost certainly not a catfish. And I'm looking forward to looking around on the internet and asking some other fish experts that have looked at more otoliths than I have what species they think this might be. Because all I had left was a skull with some otoliths and a little bit of fish fillet in the stomach when I pulled those out.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we've talked about their ear bones and all. Judah wants to know, does the fish have teeth?
It does. We can open his mouth. They're very small teeth. They're very small. But see, and they're almost more like crushing. Well, no, those look like teeth. There they are. So you remember I said they more or less swallow their prey whole. So this is kind of for grabbing and crushing. But yeah, there's some teeth in there.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Ezra, I have another thing to ask. How are they so flexible? Because I have never known that they have spines.
Like a spine as in like a backbone?
Yeah, like they're
Yep.
what we see here.
Yeah, the backbone. I mean, our spines are pretty flexible too. He's extra flexible because he has no flesh anymore. So that's bending a lot more than he would probably necessarily bend in the wild if he had all of his muscles. The same way if you've got just a human skeleton, you can bend it a whole lot, but your muscles keep you from being able to bend totally in half.
Gotcha.
So.
And while we're standing over here, before we jump into the fish stomach, how big are their eyes? So show them to me.
About that big. They're kind of big by fish standards.
And fish eyes are really cool. You don't have to do it, but we do have video somewhere of taking the
lens
out of a fish.
I'm so bad at that. Like, I am not a graceful fish dissector, as you can see here. That requires a little bit more finesse than my shaky caffeinated self has. But yeah, I've seen people do it. It's pretty cool.
Ezra, ask as many questions as you want. What is their lifespan? Do you know how long they live?
I do not, but I bet Justin does.
Yep. So, all right, so let's jump into the stomach.
All right. So I'm going to cut his stomach open. And just so you know, this is as much a surprise for me as it is for you. I have not opened this. I have no idea what's in here. So hopefully it's cool.
So is it like Christmas every time you open a stomach?
It really is. It really is, because every time I think I know everything I'm going to find, I find something weird that I wasn't expecting. I mean, those speckled worm eels were wild.
Wow. Okay.
Oof, that smells funky.
What is the scientific name for the study of fish?
Ichthyology.
Very good question, Linda.
Yeah.
How long can they swim before they stop?
I don't know if they do stop, actually. So there's something called, in sharks at least, there's something called obligate ram ventilators. So obligate means they always have to do it. Ram means they shove forward, and ventilating is breathing. And so they can never stop swimming, or else they would stop pushing water over their gills and breathing. I don't think red drum fall into that category, but I can't say I've ever watched one sit still either. So I don't know. I'll watch the one at the estuarium for a long time and see what I got.
All right, so let's see.
So this is going to be really fascinating to write up.
It looks like there's shrimp in
there.
there.
Are tons of little shrimp in here. Yep, and hopefully I think they're Penaeid shrimp, not grass shrimp. Dr. Baker, if you're watching, I'm sorry. So these little guys are all shrimp. We've also got some crab legs in here. I was not prepared for this to be this full. I sort of thought this was going to be like one fish in here as compared to a heap of little shrimp. So that's kind of a cool thing. Sometimes when I open a stomach, there's like one giant prey item. And other times when I open a stomach, there's tons of little tiny prey items. So it's all, and for drum the same size.
Wow.
Which is
really cool.
Really cool.
Ileana wants to know if it needs teeth or if it swallows its food whole.
It swallows its food whole. I'm hoping. Well, you can see the shrimp are pretty whole, actually. Those have not been chewed. I'm trying to see if that's more or less a whole crab here. This is probably a Calanectes sapidus.
I bet we can see it. Okay, so
a blue crab, like
blue crab.
The ones you eat.
Wow.
These are the tasty ones that humans like to eat too. And I'm looking for his swimming leg. There's his swimmerette. So I would identify this crab as a portunid crab, a crab that swims, because he's got this paddle-like fin on the back. It's a little damaged. Oh, no, there it is. It's a little damaged. I thought it was damaged. So he's got this. This is for swimming. And he's got his claw, and his claws have red. Most of the other portunid crabs don't have the red. If it doesn't have the red, I don't know what kind of crab it is. But at least when it's got the red, I know that it's probably a blue crab.
So Cooper, who's 5, he wants to know, why do drum eat so many shrimp?
Because they have lots of protein, they were easy to swallow, and they were available. They'll probably eat anything. If it fits in their mouth, they're going to eat it.
Keela, who's 11, how much food can they eat in a day?
I'm not sure. This is pretty full. This is probably close. But I don't know how fast it digests. That's actually a whole question of my dissertation, is how quickly different food items in a stomach digest.
So that's the cool thing about, science in general. It's one thing to look into a fish's stomach to see what they've eaten and all, but you're learning so much more about it as you do this.
Yes.
As you're learning how they digest, what they digest, and then with the otoliths, where they travel.
Yep.
So there's a whole lot on the marine science that we're working at here of finding out all the ins and outs of a red drum.
Yes, it's awesome. We'll know as much as we can about what they do and their life cycle and where they live and how they live, and that makes it easier for us to make rules and laws to protect them and make sure there's always red drum for you to catch in the future.
And then I was going to say, what's really cool too, so you're focused on diet, but you will chat with the fisheries lab on some other things if you have questions. And that's the other really cool thing about the interdisciplinary side of science, is we all work together.
We all work together. They give me stomachs. They take the otoliths and then they give me the stomachs. They tell me where they caught the fish. We both do acoustic telemetry, which is tracking fish with little tags. And they have a set of hydrophones out that hear the tags, and I also will have a set out, and we'll communicate with each other if their fish swim over to me and my fish swim over to them. And we can actually do that all over the Gulf Coast and into Florida. All scientists communicate with each other when they have tagged fish in the water. It's so cool. Animal tracking and the community of scientists that track fish and how we all cooperate with each other and let each other know when fish show up is one of my favorite things.
Aaron wants to know, how do they just swallow their food whole without chewing? Do fish ever choke?
I've never heard of one choking and dying, but I have seen them eat something, have it be really uncomfortable, and spit it back out. So that, I imagine that would be kind of what they did. If they started to swallow it and it wouldn't go down or it was still fighting, they'd just kind of cough it back up.
Keela's asking, do red drums swim in pods? Do you know? Are they more single?
They do the schooling thing. Definitely when it's time to reproduce, they get together in giant reproductive groups. I'm not sure what they do the rest of the year. I've never caught a giant school of them before, which makes me think they're probably hanging out onesie-twosie.
All right. Dawson, who's 9, are these fish nocturnal?
I don't know. But when I track them, I will find out. So in addition to gut content, I also do acoustic tracking, which is where I put a little tag in the fish, and that tag makes a Morse code like ping, 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 ping. Each tag has a unique series of pings that identifies that fish. So I'll write down the sex of the fish. No, I won't. I can't tell that externally. I'll write down the size of the fish and where I caught it. And then as the fish swims around, I'll know where it went. And I can sort of make some hypotheses about its movement. So if it's nocturnal, it's probably going to move around a whole lot at night and not move around so much during the day. And I'll be able to tell that once I put some tags in them.
Cool. All right, so let's get back to the stomach. Lily 8 wonders how long it takes the food to digest. So that's one thing that you're looking at.
Yep, we're hoping to run that experiment this summer. I'm really excited to do it. We have to get the fish. I have to figure out what they eat on the regular basis first. So, because I want to feed them the right stuff. If I feed them, what's a good example? If I feed them hot dogs, and red drum never eat hot dogs, then it doesn't really matter how fast they digest a hot dog. So I need to know what they eat. It looks like they like shrimp, looks like they like crabs. I know they like catfish, so that I can feed them those typical diet items and figure out how quickly they digest them based on my lab experiment.
What is the Ava, who's 12? She wants to know, what's the strangest thing you've ever found in a fish's stomach, just in general?
The strangest thing I've ever found is, where'd my worm eel go? Where is he? There he is. This is the strangest thing I've ever found. This is a speckled worm eel. That's his face, what remains of it.
So do you know how old it was?
The worm eel? Not a clue. I pulled an otolith out, so I guess in theory I could give it to Justin and see if he could age it, but I'm not sure if anybody's done any worm eel aging studies.
So this is probably out of your realm, but I'm just curious, do eels have ear bones like fish do?
Eels are fish. Yep, they have ear bones. These were very small, and I definitely lost one trying to dig them out.
Ezra, can these fish eat eels or stingray and stuff like that, like 1 foot things bigger than them? So can they eat things that are bigger than them?
I don't think so. It's got to fit in their mouth.
But the biggest thing you said you found in a red drum stomach was what? It was a
whole catfish, about this big.
Wow.
Yeah, he was a big red drum, but yeah, it was a whole catfish.
So we've seen what's in this stomach, but we know the other stomach.
Let's see what's in there. It's probably similar because they were caught in the same location.
So that's the other thing too, is when you look at what's caught in a fish's stomach, and if they're caught in the same location, you can kind of learn a little bit more about what they eat and how they eat.
What they eat and how they eat and what lives there. So there's probably lots of shrimp living where that red drum was eating. Whereas there isn't little shrimp like that in the place where the drum was eating eels. So they tend to eat what's easiest to get. Oh, that looks like... Oh, what is that? What is that? I don't know. It's mush. It might be a fish. I'm going to not poke at it with my scissors. I'm going to use something slightly more delicate. That could be mushed fish. No, that's not mushed fish. There's a shrimp there. So we've got some shrimp again. That's pieces of crab.
So the interesting thing looking at these two stomachs, and if we put them next to each other, is the other one looks like there's more whole fish in it, and you can see it, where this one looks like there's more digestion to it.
Yes. So they probably ate at different times. I really don't know what a lot of this is, guys.
Cool. Well, you'll have to dig through it and let us know.
What?
That looks like a crab.
It looks like a piece of crab, but it's squishy.
Is it soft crab?
Is it? Yeah. Oh, if it ate like a newly molted, yeah, that would make sense. I would take advantage of a soft-shelled crab if I was a red drum.
Patton and Parker want to know, how often do fish sleep?
I'm not sure they do or how they do. I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up, and there may even be some disagreement about whether they sleep like we sleep, or if they do something kind of different to burn fewer calories and rest. I really don't know.
So we're going to save a lot of these questions, too, for Justin in the Fisheries Lab.
Yes.
And I know that Crystal is watching in the Fisheries Lab, so she may actually be able to help out as well.
Yes, definitely. Oh, Crystal.
Emma Ray wants to know, how do they digest what they eat? So, and that's what you're trying to figure out.
I mean, they digest it with stomach enzymes and juices and stomach acid, just like we do. But how quickly they digest it, I don't really know yet.
And then, do you know what is the greatest predator or prey of a red drum?
Prey? Looks like it's shrimp, but also crabs.
And the predator?
Greatest predator? When they're this big? I'm pretty sure sharks eat them. And then when they're littler, again, fish will eat anything that fits in their mouth. So when they're littler, any fish that can fit them in their mouth will try to eat them.
And like we were talking to Carissa yesterday about lionfish. That could be one. They'll suck them right up if they're small enough.
If they're small enough, absolutely.
All right, so last question coming from Nick. And he's just curious if you've ever found any plastic in a fish stomach.
I haven't yet. But I know that is potentially a thing. But I have not found any yet, thank goodness.
Well, Sarah, we really appreciate the time. We'll get with the fisheries lab to help answer some of the movement and about the fish. And then we'll shoot you any questions that people have at the last thing. But we really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. This was fun.
Oh, by the way, Crystal said she is working on some red drum age data. So I think we might have something to help out with this.
Nice. There we go.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sarah.
Bye.